Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and I just hit 3,500 ELO for the first time in the Open Grade League. Today, I'm going to be doing a full deep dive on the team that I used, showing different lead matchups and the tips and tricks that I used for how to play out of some of the more tricky ones. The team is built around Shadow Malamar as a sweeper. This Pokemon is unbelievably strong and flexible even in its bad matchups. For the safe switch, I'm using the ever flexible and trusty Furret, and as the lead, Tinkaton, as Tinkaton does great at breaking several top meta cores. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. And in game number 1, we pick up a very bad lead, Tinkaton into Unova Stunfisk. So I'm going to safe switch out into the Furret. Furret is now going to be chipped with a Mud Bomb, my opponent now choosing to send in a Shadow Malamar, and I'm going straight for the Trailblaze. Furret on the save switch is almost always optimally played by Trailblazing once, and then you can spam out Swifts. This ramps up the Sucker Punch damage, as you see Sucker Punch absolutely deleting this Malamar, and now I will fire off the Swift before my opponent is able to make it to their next move. If they want to shield, I'm going to double shield and take switch. I need to generate some kind of advantage out of this mid game. In this case, I get switch advantage, which is great because now my Tinkaton is not stuck in a bad matchup against Stunfisk, and this boosted Furret is absolutely going off. I've basically KO'd 2/3 of their team just with the Furret by itself. In comes the Shadow Malamar, in the back is Golisopod. Now it may be tempting to switch right away here, but I think there's value in staying in. I need to Psywave this into a range that I can KO them with a Play Rough. So I'm going to stay in, force both shields with foul plays, and then just continue to farm up even more. My opponent here waits, trying to watch for a potential catch. I shield, they Aqua Jet expecting the catch, and now I can send in the Tinkaton. At this point, the Shadow Psywaves have done so much damage that I can probably even just bulldoze them for a knockout. The thing I have to watch for is the Stunfisk switching in. They're very close to a move. So here, I'm actually going to predict the switch in by the Stunfisk, and I get it right. The Stunfisk will not reach a move today. Bulldoze is going to pick up the KO. Back in comes Golisopod, and purely off the power of fast moves, we almost fully farm down the Golisopod, and the last few hit points are going to be knocked out courtesy of a bulldoze. The game does pause for quite a bit there at the end, but we're going to take the win. We move to the next match, leading Tinkaton into Diggersby, another very tough lead. So I'm going to safe switch into Furret. Pacing here is a little bit unfortunate, as since I'm one turn behind, the Diggersby can outpace, make a Scorching Sands, and Scorching Sands will do some pretty serious damage. But again, I'm still going to no shield. I'm going to need Malamar more than likely to sweep this game, and Malamar will want 2 shields. Speaking of Malamar, they send in their own. They do not let me get the Swift, so I'm just going to let this go. My plan now, since I can't get switch advantage, is to go for an energy advantage. So I'm going to go for a full farm down of this Malamar, that way I can exit with energy, and a Play Rough into the Diggersby should put it into a range where I can probably just foul play it with my Malamar, and I don't have to worry about debuffing myself with a superpower. So Play Rough is going to land. There's a switch to Shadow Malamar. In the back, they have a Shadow Dusknoir, and this is going to be a battle of fast move pressure. Shadow Astonish, so oppressive, but so is Shadow Psywave. They go for the Shadow Punch. I throw 2 Psywaves in the move, making sure that I am maximizing as much value at as much damage as I possibly can. So now I get to go for foul play number 2. Opponent is going to end up double shielding. They're going to try and farm all the way down, but the Psywave KOs first. In comes the Diggersby, and we get the reverse sweep with the Shadow Malamar. Superpower KOs Diggersby, and that's a good game. We move to the next match, picking up a very nice lead, Tinkaton into Bastiodon. Tinkaton obviously has a huge pacing advantage. Bulldoze will hit for double super effective damage, and we have a 50-50 chance at more debuffs. We do get the debuff here. The fact that they're staying in makes me worried about a potential Wigglytuff in the back, so I will actually invest in the health of the Tinkaton. They aggressively pivot into the Marowak, and here I'm going to build up in bait. Shadow Marowaks love to shield. This feels like a safe bait to me, but it doesn't feel safe anymore when they call it, and suddenly this game feels a lot more uncomfortable. I did get the defense drop, but man, that was a pretty risky no shield from my opponent. Their defense is at -1, so Swift should come pretty close to knocking out here. Opponent is barely able to hang on, and I'm just going to let the Furret go here. Furret will not get knocked out by the Bone Club. This does set up farm for Basti, but assuming it's Wigglytuff, I'm now going to send in Shadow Malamar. As Shadow Malamar, I'm going to go for a foul play bait here. Superpower would cleanly knock out, so if they want the Bastiodon, they're going to have to protect it. Basically, this covers for if there's a Wigglytuff in the back, I still have the health available on the Tinkaton to take home the win. So I will end up shielding up the Stone Edge, and here's where Bastiodon, it's just so bad. Its pacing is terrible. I'm already at 2 superpowers before they get to another move. They're just going to let that go. In the back, that is not a Wigglytuff, it's actually going to be an Annihilape. Annihilape going to take some pretty significant damage here, and look at these Psywaves. Even though I am debuffed from the superpower, Psywaves absolutely deleting my opponent. I have the Bulldoze loaded and ready to go. I believe my charge attack didn't actually show up there on the Rage Fist, so they will get a... Oh, no, it actually did. The charge attack did show up. The visuals looked a little odd, but it did show up. Bulldoze is going to KO, and we're going to take the win. We move to the next match, Tinkaton staring down an absolute nightmare lead in Corviknight. Corviknight completely walls off Tinkaton, and it walls off Furret's charge attacks as well. So, what do? Well, I send in Furret, and I go for the Trailblaze. Trailblaze is double resisted. It does basically nothing in terms of damage, but it boosts up Sucker Punches. And turning my Sucker Punches even more deadly is going to be key. Most Corviknight teams are structured pretty similarly to something like a Corviknight Double Water. So, if you can get through the Corviknight, even if you have to go down shields, your boosted Furret should be able to put in incredible work in the backline. And also with Corviknight out of the way, typically Tinkaton can do well as well. Here, my opponent has an exceedingly good Corviknight. They're barely able to survive the last Sucker Punch, and unfortunately, I'm forced to go down both shields. But the moment they send in Blastoise, I know this game is not over. Blastoise, not wanting to take a boosted Trailblaze, they're going to shield the Swift bait, and you know what? I'm going for a second bait here. A boosted Trailblaze is no joke. They're going to double shield, and Furret is going to make one final Swift before I get rollouted down. The fact that they brought a Blastoise into Furret, I'm trying to think, what is a worse matchup there? And I can only really think of 2 things. Morpeko or Feraligatr. In either case, I'm going to need to prioritize getting a small energy advantage on the Malamar, so that way I can outpace in case it's either one of those 2 Pokemon. So here, I'm going to switch into the Shadow Malamar. I'm going to be hit with a Hydro, but that's fine. I just need the pacing advantage in the endgame here, and it ends up being a non-Shadow Feraligatr. Non-Shadow Feraligatr, unfortunately, not a mon that I can just one-shot with a superpower, so I will go for the foul play. Opponent overfarms as much as they can, but they were not able to overfarm enough to allow them to win the game. They only have 8 here, so I can outpace by 2 turns, make it to the Bulldoze. Bulldoze is going to be able to knock out the Feraligatr. In comes Blastoise, that gets fairy weighted down, and despite a nightmare lead, we're able to take the win. We see another tough lead in the next match, Tinkaton into Claydol. I save switch into Furret, and out comes Morpeko. This matchup in particular, having a high rank Furret is extremely helpful. Morpeko is going to be firing off the Aura Wheel instantly, wanting to boost up its attack. Aura Wheel does huge damage, but with an HP weighted Furret, I am barely able to hang on here and make one final Swift. Now this Swift, forcing the shield advantage out of the mid game, is what allows me to beat this line every single time that I play against it. Morpeko is now in Hangry form, which means the Aura Wheel is going to be dark. It's resisted. So that's not a problem. I can tank the dark Aura Wheel and get a nice farm down. In the back with this team is going to be Credilli, which means that with a shield advantage, my Shadow Malamar is going to be able to completely sweep this game. I fire off the foul play. We're going to see a no shield from the Claydol. Claydol will go for the Rock Tomb, looking to lower my attack, and I will commit a shield. In the back, right on cue, there is Credilli. At this point, I don't really see a point in baiting. I'm already debuffed. I just need to lock in some kind of damage. So I will go for the superpower. My opponent will invest a shield, and now my attack is going to be 3 stages debuffed. So I'm very low. I'm going to switch out, however. I'm able to bank the move for later, send in Tinkaton, and Tinkaton will fire off the Play Rough. Now they're potentially in a range where I can even knock out with a foul play and wouldn't have to lower my attack. Rock Tomb is going to connect. That will not be enough to KO. In comes the Claydol, and now I can just farm up with the Malamar. Malamar, very close to the back-to-back charge attacks here. I get to go for the foul play. That's going to KO the Claydol. In comes Credilli. We get the superpower, but even a foul play should do it. So despite a very tough lead and losing switch as well, this team, not a problem, as Shadow Malamar is able to take the win. We move to the next match, leading Tinkaton into Tinkaton. Now, our backline, of course, is very, very weak to Tinkaton. Furret does not do well there, and Shadow Malamar doesn't like this matchup either. So I'm going to want to stay in this lead for a while and play it out. As long as I get a debuff on one of the 2 bulldozes I'm going to throw in this matchup, I'm going to be pretty happy to make the play that I'm about to make, and we get it first try. That is very, very nice. My play here is to trade bulldozes and then hard pivot into the Furret, because with their defense 1 stage debuff, 7 sucker punches plus a trailblaze will knock out, and it makes life very uncomfortable for the Tinkaton. But here my opponent actually has the same idea. They're gonna insta-pivot into the Azumarill when I send in the Furret, so I don't quite get to execute the play as I typically would. Furret can tank any one move here, Ice Beam, Play Rough, it's not gonna matter. This Azumarill, however, is on a surprise nuke of Hydro Pump, but even that will not be enough to KO. Here, I am expecting that my opponent is actually going to respect the Trailblaze, so instead of the Trailblaze, I'm going to be going for the Double Swift, as Double Swift will ensure that I at least get some damage onto the Azumarill, and now I hard pivot into the Shadow Malamar. I want Shadow Malamar at an advantage. I immediately trade my shield for a small amount of energy head start. In comes the Tinkaton, and I can pick up the knockout here with a Foul Play. So Foul Play into the Tinkaton is going to pick up the KO. We'll have to see what they have in the back, and they have Shadow Malamar, so they have an extremely similar team. I have already taken some damage on my Malamar, which is a little bit unfortunate, as I am now approaching a range where a move might knock out. Here I will go for the superpower. I just need as much damage as I possibly can, and I switch into Tinkaton to force them to superpower. This is not Foul Play range. I have a very high rank Tinkaton, so if they try and go for it, which they do, they are not going to get it, and we're going to be able to make the Bulldoze, knock out the Malamar, and the opponent is going to resign the match. We've got a tough opponent in the next match, Rise, and a pretty bad lead for Tinkaton staring down a Feraligatr. Feraligatr has a massive pacing advantage in this matchup, and because it's the regular Feraligatr, Play Rough actually doesn't threaten it at all. It's not like it's going to set up a farm down or anything. So I can fire off the Play Rough here. Landing it would be nice, and I do land it, but I can't really farm down. I'm forced out into the Furret. He stays in to throw energy, which I am pretty happy about, as Furret is now going to be met with the Hydro Cannon. In comes Clodsire, and this is not a Pokemon that I'm particularly happy to see. I would definitely have preferred that the Clodsire was in back, because Malamar obviously completely destroys it. So I do get a boost up with the Trailblaze, Earthquake comes out from the Clodsire to guarantee the knockout, and now in comes Shadow Malamar. Shadow Malamar, my goal here is I want to try and go for a 1-shield farm down. Without this farm down, I can't win the game, so I'm going for it here. I can't get it. I try for the catch, but it's a simultaneous switch. Corviknight into Tinkaton. There's no way to win, and I will resign the match. We move to the next game, Tinkaton into Azumarill. Azumarill, this is a positive lead for Tinkaton, so I'm very happy to stay in here and play this out to start with, as they do have a pretty significant pacing disadvantage as well, as I'll reach the Play Rough before they're able to reach theirs. Opponent is now going to safe switch into Galarian Corsola, and that is not a safe switch by any means. Galarian Corsola, they can hit for neutral damage with Power Gem, but Furret is very bulky, so Power Gem does not actually two-shot. Now here, this is a very important play. I'm going to zero bubble the Trailblaze, because I don't need to do damage with my charge attack to the Corsola, when instead, I can get boosted, farm it all the way down, and leave with so much boosted energy. Now, my Furret exits with so many moves loaded. In comes the Azumarill. They have an Ice Beam Bang, so I'm just going to throw an alignment in case they try to CMP tie. I land the Trailblaze, and now I get a boosted Swift. I think it's actually a +2 Swift, and Swift KOs the Azumarill. It's the Shadow Annihilate in the back. We bring in the Shadow Malamar, and the opponent will immediately concede the match. Tinkaton staring down another Azumarill in the next match, and this Azumarill is planning on staying in this matchup at the very least to start with. Same game plan as before, I will fire off the Play Rough. As I ran this team more, I would usually throw the Play Rough on 10 instead of 7, because if you throw on 7, your energy dry, and then your opponent can look to switch something in. Like in this case, they switch in Credilli. Credilli Rock Tombs, but I am not going to stay in that matchup. Instead, I'm just going to bring in Malamar. Here, my game lagged for a little bit, so I believe it ended up lagging into a CMP tie there on the Foul Play. The Foul Play bait grabbing the shield is really, really good news for me. I'm now -1, but I'm very comfortable just unleashing a superpower, because this is a Shadow Malamar. Even at -1, they are not surviving this superpower. Opponent is going to double shield. They're now going to pivot out, sending in the Azumarill, and I will make a last-second superpower before they're able to farm me down. Switch clocks up. I banked a move on Tinkaton from earlier, and let's let's use it now. So Play Rough is going to connect, getting that Azumarill very low. Azumarill will get to go for the Play Rough, but it's resisted. Even though it will get me low, I am unwilling to commit the shield here. Instead, I will fire off this Bulldoze, denying any additional charge attacks from this Azumarill, and we'll have to see what they have in the back. Well, we won't see yet, because they're going to send in Cradilly. Cradilly firing off the Rock Tomb, I'm going to commit the shield, and I will be going for the Play Rough. Play Rough will not be enough to pick up the knockout here because they're debuffed. I'll try for a catch, but it's a simultaneous switch. Shadow Malamar into Clodsire. Clodsire a bit uncomfortable now that the Malamar's gone. I bring in the Furret, and unfortunately, I do get my fast move denied. However, it's Trailblaze time with the Furret. Furret, so good at just boosting through things. We go for the Trailblaze, it doesn't do much, but again, it increases that Sucker Punch damage. So these Sucker Punches progressively get more and more threatening as time goes on. Earthquake is gonna land. I go for the Swift, predicting a potential switch in, but they don't go for it. But they'll switch it here, so we're just gonna get the catch, and getting this catch is going to secure the win. Opponent is gonna undercharge, they need a farm down to win it, but it's actually me who gets the farm down, and I get to exit with the Bulldoze loaded. So they were very weak, the Tinkaton. They were ABA weak with obviously Clodsire as the hard check in the back. So I was at a team advantage there, but with careful gameplay, we're able to convert it to a win. Tinkaton into Malamar. This is the non-Shadow Malamar. This is obviously a nice lead, but it's honestly a lead that I find particularly uncomfortable because a lot of Malamar lead teams employ what's called an overload strategy into Tinkaton. They'll have like a Malamar with a Drapion in the back, a Malamar with a Jumpluff in the back, and basically say, even though I'm ABA weak, the Pokemon that I have are so strong that you can't 1v2. And that's exactly what my opponent's doing here. They banked all of that Malamar energy, and now they sent in Jumpluff. I'm forced to fire off this Play Rough on the Charge Attack Priority Tide to prevent their next move from landing. I end up wasting all of that energy, and now things will get quite uncomfortable. Back in comes the Malamar. Malamar will fire off a move. They will need to Superpower to pick up the knockout, and they will go for that. But now, I have my choice of bringing in Malamar, which is still going to take pretty significant damage from a -1 Foul Play or Furret, which would get superpowered, and in the back, we see Drapion. So they are running a true overload strategy into the Tinkaton, with the understanding that if they can get through the Tinkaton, their backline is probably going to be good into mine, and in this case, they are absolutely right. They do get the crunch debuff, but unfortunately the writing's been on the wall for this game for quite some time. I go for the Swift. It does do some nice damage. The Sucker Punches are adding up onto the Drapion, but there's just not really a path for me in this game. I shield the Aqua Tail. They have another one. I'm double shielding. I'm trying to make something, anything happen, but I just don't think it's possible. Maybe if I threw this Swift instantly and then switched, I could have been okay, but they end up no shielding anyway, understanding that they can survive it. So realistically, there was just never a way for me to win this game because they knew their shield had to go to the move from the Malamar, and once they realized that, there was just no way for me to win. So these overload style strategy teams are genuinely very difficult for this team just because they are built to overload the Tinkaton, and then there's a lot of Pokemon that are strong in the back for your backline. We see a tough lead in the next match here, leading into a Claydol. Out a safe switch into Furret, and my opponent is going to respond with a Shadow Drapion. Shadow Drapion down energy is actually not very comfortable for the opponent into Furret, as Furret normally loses the matchup because the opponent gets the crunch when you get to Swift and they win Charge Attack Priority. But Furret being up energy means this is no longer a problem. Furret will get to force a shield or switch advantage, and my opponent will end up committing the shield. They'll farm up a little bit, but I'm more than happy to let this go. I got a shield advantage, and now I can get a massive energy advantage with Tinkaton. Given the choice between leading into something like a Corviknight or leading into something like a Mud Slapper, I'd always rather lead into the Mud Slapper because at the very least, if I'm able to reverse farm something down, my energy goes somewhere. Like even against the Claydol, a Play Rough is very nice as it reduces the amount of charge attacks that Malamar has to throw at the Claydol from 2 to 1. So they get to send in the Claydol, now I get to fire off the Play Rough. While it's not going to take them below half HP, that's still very valuable damage, and now I get to send in the Shadow Malamar. Malamar will immediately be met with the Rock Tomb. There's going to be the shield as I look to overfarm quite significantly. The fact that they're not switching, very good news for me, so I will go for the Foul Play. Foul Play into the Claydol is going to be shielded. Opponent is just going to get KO'd. They just do not have the energy that they need. Malamar, foul play, picks up the knockout. In the back is Toxapex. And now we know why they couldn't really afford to switch. They just had to stay in and try and do as much Mudslap damage as they possibly could. We're going to make one final foul play. The high-ranked Shadow Malamar coming in clutch. This foul play is going to get them low. And now I get to send in Tinkaton. Tinkaton here, I should just go for the Bulldoze instantly. In the moment, I think I was overthinking it as to whether a Bulldoze or a Play Rough did more. Even though Bulldoze is a bad move, Bulldoze still does more. And we see I should have thrown it sooner because I get the debuff, but they barely survive and they pick up the knockout. But Psywave's a one-turn move, Poison Jab's a two-turn move, so we Psywave down and we get the win anyway. Hopping into the next match, and it's another Corviknight lead. I safe switch into Furret, and the opponent responds with a Shadow Annihilate. That is not what normally is behind a Corviknight, and this is a big problem. I normally really rely on Furret to be able to boost through Corviknight and get value against their backline, but I'm not getting any kind of value against Annihilate. Annihilate boosts itself with Rage Fist, and that allows them to win switch advantage. I send in the Shadow Malamar. Unfortunately, I do get one turn Bring and Lag, so I take the counter when I should not have. But when they send Corviknight into the Shadow Malamar, suddenly I think there might be hope. Corviknight is going to go for the Iron Head, and I just have a really nice pacing advantage available to me on the Shadow Malamar. I'm up energy, and on top of that, I just outpace them. Corviknight not known for its speed. Corviknight is going to be firing off an Iron Head. I'm looking to farm up to 100. Opponent tries for a catch, and I throw the superpower right away. Do they think I reacted in time? No, they do not. The superpower lands, and suddenly we're right back in it. Now I get to go for a foul play, continually chipping away at this Lapras. I'm very close to a move on the Malamar, and now I get to send in Tinkaton. And we know Tinkaton can survive 2 Sparkling Arias, and this Lapras just gets lower and lower and lower. I need energy on the Tinkaton, because if I can just threaten the shield, then I'll be able to combo and take the win with the move on the Malamar. So I farm up to the back-to-back Bulldozes. Bulldoze is going to pick up the KO. In comes Corviknight. I get to the Play Rough, as this will guarantee a knockout if they let it through. Play Rough KOs Corviknight, and Tinkaton gets its revenge. We move to the next game, leading Tinkaton into another Claydol. We've seen this before, and it was Credilli and Morpeko in the back, and it looks like this is going to be the same team. The last time we played it, the trainer threw the Ore Wheel instantly, and we were still able to survive the boosted Thundershocks. Here, my opponent is going to overfarm, and they're going to try and pick up the knockout here with a CMP tie, but the HP wait for it will not be denied. We're able to tank that Ore Wheel, and that right there is the shield advantage that we're going to use to win this game. I send back in the Tinkaton. We get a nice reverse farm, as a Dark Ore Wheel is not something Tinkaton will ever worry about. Morpeko actually ends up going the double Psychic Fangs route here. The Dark Ore Wheel, I believe, will do more cumulative damage overall. They just really want debuffs, but I'm not going to let a Mudslap land. I immediately switch into the Malamar, and out comes Credilli. Against Credilli, I'm up a shield, so I'm not baiting. I'm just going straight for this superpower. Opponent is going to end up committing the shield. My attack is now 1 stage debuffed, and may as well make it 2 thanks to that Rock Tomb. But even so, the Shadow Psywaves do add up quite significantly. A -2 superpower will still get my opponent pretty low. They're going to get to fire off the Rock Tomb. After this, my attack is now -4. It cannot go any lower, and they're going to switch in the Claydol. But I get to bank the move, and by banking the move, as long as my charge attack shows up, I win the game because I win charge attack priority. The energy from earlier means I can land a Play Rough. Play Rough puts them into foul play range. I even get a second Play Rough as well. Tinkaton popping off. My opponent is able to exit with the charge attack loaded, but they do not win charge attack priority against Malamar. Malamar, foul play, picks up the knockout. In comes Credilli, and it turns out we don't even need the charge move, as we can just Shadow Psywave all the way down. We're now 4-0 in the final set, needing the 5-0 for 3500s, and our final opponent is Marto Galde. Marto, who I actually did a duo stream with over the weekend. Incredibly good battler, but obviously I have a great lead here. This is the Shadow Jump Fluff, which means that 2 Play Roughs will actually be able to pick up the knockout, whereas with the regular, 2 Play Roughs do not, and it leaves it in a very awkward health range. Shadow Acrobatics number 2 is going to land, getting Tinkaton deep into the red, and I will look to overfarm, not quite as much as I could have, but I wanted to avoid a catch. So Play Rough will pick up the KO. In comes Blastoise, and here normally I would just pivot into the Furret. This prevents Blastoise from getting too much of an energy advantage, but here I go for a Play Rough and a switch. Honestly, I do think saving the Play Rough is probably better, because if it's something like a Morpeko in the back, I could still get swept. I need energy if it's Morpeko, so I am going to overfarm here and commit the shield as they go for the Hydro Cannon. Now I'm going to farm up well over the back-to-back Swifts and throw right before their next Hydro. Swift into the Blastoise will pick up the KO. In the back is not a Morpeko, but instead a Carbink. Trailblaze into the Carbink is super effective damage. They're gonna no shield, but now I get to send in Shadow Malamar. And look at the Psy-Waves go. I don't even have to superpower to win this game. I can just go straight foul play, and we can watch the Psy-Waves absolutely delete one of the bulkiest Pokemon in the Great League. They go for the Power Gem, but it just does not matter. The pacing on Carbink is so slow, and in this matchup, you feel the power of Shadow Malamar. 10 turns to a charge move every single time. Incredible Psy-Wave damage. Superpower is going to get them low. I switch into the Tinkaton, get the Fairy Wind farm down, and we secure the 5-0 set to 3509 ELO. All in all, I know that with the big changes arriving to the meta come June the 3rd, that Malamar may not have the same effectiveness that it has this season. But there's still a week left in the season, and Shadow Malamar basically doesn't really have any counters in this current meta. So if you're looking to make a last-second push, looking to rank up, I would recommend this team. I tried to include as many leads as I could, as many different leads as I could in this video. Good leads, bad leads. Primarily, I tried to show a lot of bad leads and how I like to play out of them, because I feel like it's easier to play out of the good leads. But just to show that I feel like this team has a lot of flexibility. All 3 team members feel like they put in an incredible amount of work. It never really felt like there was a weak link at any time. Tinkaton, it's just a beast. It absorbs hit after hit. Due to its incredible Fairy Steel typing, it breaks so many teams. Furret, once you Trailblaze one time, those Sucker Punches are deadly. Oh my goodness. And I've already said enough about Shadow Malamar, but Shadow Malamar is just absolutely incredible. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.